projects, I always have hot soapy water in my sink so that I can wash my fully cooked. You know, we want it to penetrate all this meat. That's it. And the reason it's all falling out. You can see I keep lots. The Complete Guide to Home Canning is a very good book. Okay, brush it down a little bit so you can see her. See old Goldie. That extra one on there. Whoops. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. I am so excited to be here with you today, as I always am. You know, pressure canning meat used to really intimidate me, and now it is my most favorite thing to do because it is the easiest canning project you can do, especially if you choose to do what we're doing today, and we're going to raw pack. We're going to be making ugly pork. Come along and join me as we jar these up and get them on our shelves. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Angela and I am the Inquisitive Farm Wife. And if you are a returning friend, thanks so much for being here. Did you know that February is National Canned Goods Month? It sure is. And so Miller Live Kitchen, along with Jenny's Scratch Made Kitchen, are co-hosting a collaboration called Plan to Can. And they invited me to put some videos out. And of course I said yes, because last month, every single week, I brought you a video. I'm hoping this month to bring you a video every month. And if I can get it done, next month, every week, I'll be bringing you a video too. I am in the canning mood. The other day, hubby and I were at the grocery store and they had pork shoulder butt roast on sale. It was $1.99 a pound. Around here, I think that's a pretty good price. You know, hubby and I are just kind of getting into adventuring out with pork other than your typical bacon and breakfast sausage. And I had a good friend that told me she loves canned pork for sandwiches and things. So I thought, you know what? Let's give it a try. It's on sale. I've got some paper towels set underneath this. And then I have a bag to just kind of catch any of those juices or anything that might sneak out when we go to open this up. I do this with any of my meat, whether it be beef, pork, chicken. It just kind of helps with sanitary cleanup. And with any of my other canning projects, I always have hot soapy water in my sink so that I can wash my hands, you know, give them a quick rinse before I touch any of my faucets or anything like that. I'm just going to go ahead and pat our roast, clean up some of this liquid that is on the packaging. So we'll just kind of let this dry. I'm going to dispose of this, and now let's get to cutting. I think I want to trim off some of this fat. Some people might tell you you could render this. I'm thinking it's going to be a treat for our guard dogs. Here on the farm, the livestock guardian dogs work really hard and they deserve to get some treats too. Now this roast was over 9 pounds, but I knew with the fat and the bone that this would hopefully fill 8 jars. They say about a pound of meat per jar. I don't want to get rid of all of the fat, because this is what's going to bring moisture to your meat. Now, you can cook this. You could partially cook your roast and can it up. That's perfectly fine. But I have found, at least with chicken, that if you par cook it first, although it looks prettier in the jar, I don't know how to explain it, but it's full of juice, but it's dry. I really don't know how to explain it, but that's exactly what happens. So I prefer raw packing everything. If there's any silver skin or any of that on there, you want to make sure that you go ahead and get that out now. There's also some bone in here that we need to work around. So I'm going to try to trim around it the best I can. You're probably wondering, can I can ham? No. Well, there's a yes and no. There's a caveat to everything, don't you know? So ham is a cured meat, and you are not supposed to can cured meat as a as the only product in the jar, like we're doing today. We're just going to can up the pork. However, if you want to use it as flavoring, an additive, you can. There are tested recipes out there on using bacon in, say, your baked beans, or using ham in maybe a split pea soup or a ham and beans soup. But the point is, it's only a small amount of your meat. The thing is with cured meats is the density is different with them than it is for uncured meats. Now, I feel like I did a really good job trimming up this bone, but I am not going to get rid of this. I'm going to take this with some beans in my Instapot and we'll have ham and beans soup, along with any little pieces that I think might be too small to put in our jars. So I have this set aside, and if I don't want to use it now, I actually can put it in the freezer and use it later. And if I never get those ham and beans made, I can throw it in with some scraps and make some stock. And the hard part is just about over. All we need to do now is cube our meat. You're probably wondering, can I do this with beef or chicken? Of course, yes, most definitely. The raw pack method of meat is the same concept for no matter what you're making. You just want to make sure that when you are cubing your meat, you want to pretty much make everything uniform in size. This will just help with making sure that everything in the jar gets fully cooked. You know, we want it to penetrate all this meat. We do not want to take any chance of making our family sick. That's why we try to stick with safe canning methods. And when I cube this up, this is a good time to kind of just inspect everything. And if I want to trim it some more, I can. I see I've got a little extra fat or silver skin. We'll go ahead and take care of that. But like I said, I don't want to get rid of all the fat because that's what's going to keep this flavorful and moist. And then I'm going to fill my jars. I'm not going to tightly pack them, but I'm going to go ahead and fill them up to the 1-inch headspace, which is right here at the neck. And I'm going to start lining them up. I have enough room in today's canner to do 8 of these. And I really think we're going to be close to our 8. I'm just going to continue working on chopping this up, and then I will bring you all back when my jars are filled. So all we did was trimmed up and chopped up our roast, and any bits that would not fit into our 8 jars. I did have 9 on the counter. If you noticed earlier, I always have an extra in case one it has a chip or something like that. Now, if I would have had more than 1 extra jar worth, I would have went ahead and gotten a second canner out, or my bigger canner, or something like that. All we have left to do is add salt. This is optional. I like to add salt when I can. I'm going to put a half a teaspoon or less in each jar. Actually, I think it's going to be like a 1/4 of a teaspoon. It doesn't need a lot. I just think it needs a little bit. Then I'm going to get a paper towel and some distilled vinegar. I get it all over my rag because I'll move my rag around as I go through and check the rims. This is one last chance to check to see if anything is chipped or if I have any issues with our rims. And I like to just kind of move my rag around, making sure I get a clean spot so that we make sure we get a good seal. The lids I'm using today are ones that came on some brand new half-gallon jars that I had. I use half-gallon jars for food storage in, like dry foods, but mostly for milk. I don't know if you all are new to my channel, you might not know. I have dairy goats and dairy cows that I milk. So this particular lid required that we go ahead and warm up and moisten the seals. So I knew that 8 jars would fit in the canner that we're using today. So I went ahead and I have 8 lids. Today's recipe, we will be pressure canning. So this is only safe if you have a pressure canner. This is my little magic wand. It has a magnet on the end of it, so it can help me to pull out my lids out of my warm water. And next is just fingertip tight. And what that means is I will put my ring on top of my lid. I like to take one finger and hold it, and the other one just until, you know, the jar starts turning. That's all we have to do. This finger just will help keep the lid in place where it needs to be. That's it. And the reason that you do this is so that as this is cooking, the air that is in our product, whether it be our meat or if we're doing vegetables or whatever we're doing, can get out. Now you're wondering, why didn't you debubble? Because I didn't put any liquid in it. This is going to make its own liquid and its own broth. You'll be amazed when we pull these out of the canner. The canner that I'm using today is my oldie goldie. She's a little temperamental, so I'm hoping that this will work, but I like to use her because she's smaller and she fits just one row, whether I'm using pints or quarts. I want to make sure I can see through, and if I can't see, I don't know if you could hear that, but I gave her a good whistle. Poor thing, she's an oldie. She deserves a whistle every once in a while. Now I'm going to put my jars into the canner. And remember, the canner is not on. Oops, I almost forgot. We have hard water. We need a splash of vinegar in here. That was more like a glug. We'll just put these in this canner. Now, if you're wondering, yes, there's already water in the canner. Read the directions on your particular canner. Usually it's around the 2 to 3 inch mark. My little trick to you is this is my debubbler, and I have different markings on here along with the ones that come with the company. I also have a 2 and a 3 inch marker. So that helps me depending on which canner I'm using and what product I'm canning, so I make sure that I get it done right. Now I just need to line up canner and make sure it's locked down. Everything felt right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my stove top on so that my canner can get to warming. When she starts steaming, that's when I can make sure we have a good seal. So sometimes this particular canner is a little finicky when I get the seal. Sometimes I get it off just a little bit. So I always make sure that I check the seal before I put it on, and then I want to double check it one more time before we start actually canning. Now she'll just warm up and we'll wait for her to steam. I really don't think you're going to be able to see it, but you should be able to hear it. Now that's going to vent for 10 minutes. For the first time, she gets to use a jiggler. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that on there just like I would normally. I was using one of these type of just kind of a stopper, I'll call it, because I would always use the dial gauge. But I have found I really like having that little hula dancer going so that I can hear that or whatever, depending on which one you use. That noise kind of comes more with this one. This one will just kind of jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. Anyway, the gauges sometimes can go off. For example, this particular model I took into my local extension office and I had it tested when I first got it, and it was off by 1. So I could either choose to pressure it 1 different, or, you know, obviously you can replace these parts. You can see I keep lots of extra parts to have on hand, but to me it's an extra security to go ahead and use the weighted gauge or the weight so that it can jiggle. And it's just kind of, I like being able to have both to refer back to. So you saw me take this little ring off. These are 5-pound weights. So the jiggler itself is 5. You put 1 on, it's 10, and then the third one would make 15. So for my altitude, we need a 10-pound weight or 11 pounds pressure if you use the dial gauge, and you're going to want to pressure can the raw pack pork without any liquids. For pints is 75 minutes and it's 90 minutes if you're doing quarts. So when this reaches pressure, then I will set a timer for that amount of time so that it can process. And if you're wondering where you can find that information, it will be on page 56-57. We'll talk about canning raw meat and the USDA canning book. The Complete Guide to Home Canning is a very good book to have for new canners. It talks all about how to safely can and process your foods. And jiggle, jiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Look at her go. Oh, that's a little too much. A little too high. Turn her down. Okay, our time is up, guys. So all I'm going to do is shut off the stove and walk away. I need to do nothing more. The rest will do on its own. Now, sometimes you'll hear people say, you know, move it off the stove onto another place. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Okay, brunch it down a little bit so you can see her. See old Goldie. Anyway, so some people, I would pick up my pressure cooker and I would move it over onto the counter, onto a heat pad, or maybe to a different place on the stove so that it could cool down faster. I found that that's not a smart idea. One, that's really, really heavy and it's super, super hot. And you have to be so extremely careful because if you knock it and it will pop pressure, you're going to have your jars siphon. You could have this thing explode on you. So please, don't do what I used to do. Do what I do now, where we just shut the stove off and do nothing but walk away. So now I've got some time, probably an hour, and I'm going to let this baby cool, and I'm going to go fix my lunch, and then I will be back, and we'll take those jars out and see what our ugly pork looks like. We're back. Now all I need to do is we'll take off the weight. I don't want to forget about this, so I'm going to put that extra one on there. Whoops, must be. Put that on there so we don't lose that. This is important. I'm going to turn this, and then I'm just going to kind of put it back on. We're going to let this set and rest for about 10 minutes. Now that our lid has been kind of cockeyed for a little bit, I can take it off away from my face. Safety first. Come on in. Let me show you what it looks like inside the canner. Here are our jars. You can see the water is pretty clean, and it looks like all the jars have already sealed. I have one of these spring-loaded jar lifters. I absolutely love this. I'll try to remember to put a link down below in the show notes so that you can see what it is off Amazon. But check this out. Ugly pork. It's what's for dinner. So all I do is I'll take these out of the canner. We're going to let them rest at least 12 hours on the counter. I'll let them set and cool, and then I will wash them really good with soapy water. And because it's a meat, I'll probably go ahead and do like a vinegar rinse. If you're not familiar with how I do that, I have a Chipotle beef recipe, and I'll put it somewhere in here. You can go check out that video where I give a very thorough description of how to wash your jars. And then you'll label them and you'll put them in on the shelf, but leave the rings off. You never want to store your jars with the rings on. That you could get a false seal. You would go to eat your food and not know, and you could really make your family sick. So always leave the rings off so that if the lid decides to unseal, you'll know it. Make sure you wash this out with hot soapy water right away and dry it. It's a very expensive piece of equipment, and you want to take the best care you can. I want to thank you for being here today. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure you leave a comment down below to enter for the prize of a brand new canner. But also, I want to get a conversation started with you. I want to hear, what are your experiences with canning? What recipes are you excited to try? Bye for now, friends.